له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه ومن صار على سبيله إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Was not so it's hadith 5 and 6. No, here's hadith number 4. No, here's hadith number 5. Yeah, sometimes the order of the hadith, the numbers in different books, they're different. No.
Subhanallah, except Quran.
Right.
Every page is same ayah, everything. Subhanallah.
So last lesson we spoke about what makes water najis,
Yeah.
what makes water impure. Now, as for the next hadith, it mentions عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كان ماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث وفي لفظ لم ينجس أخرجه الأربعة وصححه ابن خزيمة والحاكم وابن حبان والحديث صحيح. نعم.
Ustaz, قلة like this size قلة, about.
لا. Because we mentioned, how much have we mentioned last time about how much qullatain was equivalent to?
207 liters or 93 sa'an or
No.
102 kilos.
So about 307 liters.
307
7 liters.
لتر. هاي قلة.
نعم قلتان.
هاي قلتان مع بعض.
نعم. So basically what's mentioned here, إذا كان الماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث لم ينجس, in another narration. So if water reaches that amount of قلتان or قلتين, what's mentioned لا ينجس بمجرد ملاقات النجاسة. It doesn't become impure just because something impure has touched it, except إذا تغير إحدى أو أحد أوصافه, unless one of the attributes or the conditions, characteristics of the water changes, being the taste, the smell and the color. Now, of the thing that's mentioned, if water is of that amount قلتين بمعنى الماء الكثير, like a lot of water, فإنه يدفع النجاسة عن نفسه, then it will repel, it will remove the impurity by itself. ولا تؤثر النجاسة فيه, the impurity will not have an impact or affect the water, as long as it does not change it. Now, of the things that's mentioned, from what is understood from the hadith, mafhum al-hadith, then, if the water is not of qullatain, has not reached that amount, and then something impure encounters the water, then it becomes impure for the fact it's not qullatain, whether it changes or not, whether it changes its color or its smell or its taste, whether that is changed or not, they say, some say it's still impure, some say la, if it doesn't change, as we're going to mention here, So Abu Hanifa wa Shafi'i wa Ahmad and those who followed them, they mention الماء القليل ينجس بمجرد ملاقاة النجاسة ولو لم تتغير صفة من صفاته. They say if the water is a little, يعني less than قلتين, which is less than 307 liters, if something impure touches that water alone, whether it changes or not, it's najis, it's impure.
مين يقول هذا الكلام؟
أبو حنيفة
حنيفة.
والشافعي وأحمد. As for Imam Malik والظاهرية والشيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية وابن القيم رحمه الله ورحمة الله عليهم جميعا والشيخ محمد بن عبد الوهاب رحمه الله وعلماء الدعوة السلفية بنجد وغيرهم من المحققين إلى أن الماء لا ينجس بملاقاة النجاسة ما لم يتغير أحد أوصافه الثلاثة. They all mention that if the water is less than قلتين, it doesn't become impure unless one of those three characteristics has changed. If it hasn't changed, the taste, the smell, or the color, then it's not considered to be impure. As they say, what's understood regarding the hadith, those who say if the water is reached qullatain, then it doesn't carry impurity. But they mention the mafhum al-mukhalafa, that was understood in opposition to this, that's not mentioned in the hadith, but was understood that if it is less than qullatain, then it bears impurity. But those who say no, they say the water reaching qullatain, then it doesn't become impure just from encountering something of impurity. As for the mafhum of what's understood of the hadith, it doesn't necessitate that it's a must that if it's less than qullatain it's going to become impure. It may become impure by changing one of the characteristics, or it may not change at all. So they say that means and that's also understood from the situation when the Prophet Muhammad when the Bedouin came and urinated in the masjid. ما جاء بماء الكثير. He didn't bring a lot of water. أمرهم بصب الذنوب, يعني to a jug, like a bucket of water, wasn't of the level of قلتين.
Okay.
It was less than that.
But more than the urine, the liquid.
Now,
Yeah.
you see, so here it mentions Ibn al-Qayyim رحمه الله mentioned, so الماء إذا لم تغيره النجاسة فإنه ليس بنجس. If it's not changed by an impurity, then it's not impure. If the impurity that encounters the water does not make the water change. And when we say change, what we're talking about? الريح والطعم واللون, the smell, the taste, or the color. If that's not affected, it's not changed due to that, then it's not najis. فهذا اختلف فيه أهل العلم. نعم.
So, to clarify, regardless of whether it's a qullatain or not, only if the characteristics change, then the water is classed as najis.
No, because if it's qullatain, if it changes the color, the smell, or the taste with the impurity, then it's najis. even if it's qullatain. But what's mentioned here, what we understand is, if water is qullatain, is of that amount of water, it's highly unlikely to change. It's highly unlikely to change. However, if it is less than qullatain, it's likely that it will change. But if it doesn't change, then it's what? It's still pure. نعم. فهذا فيه خلاف. أنا أميل إلى أنه لا ينجس إلا إذا تغير. I'm more inclined towards that. The water is still pure as long as it's not changed. If one of the characteristics change, then خلاص, it's najis. Now, also, Naam. So basically, you have those who divide the water into being regarding whether it's a lot of water or little water, and encountering something of an impurity. Encountering an impurity. They give certain rulings for that. Also, the difference between qullatain and not being qullatain, whether it can bear impurity or not. And if the water is a lot, like they reach the level of qullatain, which is about 307 liters, then it's very unlikely. However, if it did change, then it's najis. If it did change, it would be najis. So Sheikh Abdul Rahman al-Barraq, he mentions regarding the difference of the opinion, al-rajih, al-akh bi-mantuq al-hadith. You take what is being mentioned in the hadith. And the hadith, it mentions أن الماء لا ينجس إلا أن يتغير بنجاسة قليلا كان أو كثيرا. Water is not impure unless it changes due to an impurity, whether it is a small amount or a large amount of water. Now, that's how we understand the thing to understand from it. The water would only be considered impure if it changes due to encountering an impurity, whether the water is a small amount or a large amount. Now, the next matter that is discussed in a hadith of Abi Hurairah رضي الله عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يغتسل أحدكم في الماء الدائم وهو جنب أخرجه مسلم. هذا hadith in the Sahih Muslim. I mentioned none of you should wash from the state of janaba, and that's either by way of marital relations or having a wet dream and the likes, or a person of masturbation and the likes. These things, a person would be in a state of janaba. It's not permitted to wash in still water. In still water, the water that doesn't run, it's a still stationary water, whilst in this state. This is prohibited now. So, ماء الدائم الماء الذي يستقر في مكان واحد is water that stays in one place. So there's no تجديد الماء. It doesn't renew itself. For example, if a person had a large
Big pool.
like a small pool, but it didn't have tajdeed al-ma. It was just what you have to remove the water manually and then bring in new water. Or a massive bathtub, for example, like you know how people have jacuzzi tubs in some of the nice houses. Or if that water doesn't renew itself, it just stays water. That same water is there. You cannot make ghusl in that water from janaba. Now, but if the water, what we can understand, if the water is yani jarin yajri, for example, let's say I'm in a state of janaba and I go to the beach, can I just jump in the sea and make ghusl? No. Why? Because it's not ma da'im. Or a river and the water continue flows. Now, so it's not water, is stagnant water. Then I can make ghusl from janaba in that water, no problem. So the tafsir of the water, yani based on the next hadith is وَلَا يَبُولَنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ فِي الْمَاءِ الدَّائِمِ الَّذِي لَا يَجْرِي ثُمَّ يَغْتَسِلْ فِيهِ. Don't let any of you urinate in water that is also stagnant, a water that does not run, and then perform ghusl in it. There are two things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to urinate in still water,
Still,
stagnant, يعني يعني ماء دائم لا يجري. You're not allowed to urinate in water that does not flow. Nor can you make ghusl in that water if you've urinated in it. Why? Because now أصبح نجسا. It's going to become najis. Now, وكذلك للمسلم لا يغتسل منه. Don't use that water to make ghusl. And is اغتسال فيه, going in that water making ghusl, and taking from that water for ghusl. Both of that is not permitted if the water is being urinated in. Another narration لا يغتسل فيه من الجنابة. Again, the same. Don't make ghusl in water that is still water, doesn't flow. Now, so this prohibition نهى عن البول في الماء الدائم وهو الذي لا يجري كما جاء عند البخاري ومسلم. So the Prophet prohibited urinating in water that does not flow, as mentioned in Bukhari and Muslim. Also, a prohibition in washing any ghusl from a state of janaba, which is a major impurity, in water that does not flow. Also, in the hadith Abi Hurairah in Muslim and also in Abi Dawood. Also, the prohibition of urinating in still water and washing from that water. Another prohibition. Also, prohibition of urinating in still water and taking from that water to make ghusl is also prohibited. وهذه الأحكام للماء الدائم قليلا كان أو كثيرا. This ruling, or these rulings, apply to water that is still stagnant water, whether it is a lot or a little. Also, from what we can understand based on this, that there's permissibility of urinating in water that flows, water that's not stationary. Also, is it general that any water that flows that we can urinate in? No, because sometimes flowing water may not be a lot of water, it may be a small amount. Also, it may be a source of water where people take water to benefit from, to drink, and actually not allowed to urinate in these places where people would use that water, and that's not a place to urinate, you see. But as for like the sea, the river and the likes, there's no problem in that. So what you can see from this Mahasan Islam preserves cleanliness and also ensuring that people do not do things that think people will deem to be disgusting, detested. You know? Because the reality is the water, for example, if someone went to a swimming pool, Allahul Musta'an, it's not a place to urinate because people are swimming with you. But some people, they don't care.
Selfish, dirty.
This is filthy, nasty. لا يجوز. But if a person is in the sea, the amount of water there is highly unlikely that a person urinating, or it's not likely at all, a person urinating in the water will have an impact on anyone. But if someone was in that situation, for example, it's best not to do it when someone's right next to you.
The water come.
Hey, especially if they're under the water. Allahul Musta'an. But yeah, but we say, because some people, they actually don't have shame. Some people, they don't have shame. But again, the main lesson is not to cause harm or bring harm's way to where people benefit from water, especially. And we find this, for example, even if, let's say, subhanAllah, you have water, like a barrel of water. Because that's how water is stored in some places like this, especially when they want it to get warm, they'll store it in a barrel. When you wake up from sleep, you're not meant to just put your hands in that barrel.
Yeah.
You take some of the water out of it using a utensil, and then you wash your hands. Wash your hands before putting your hands in that water. And that shows Islam preserves honor for mankind. And only mahasin, the things that are in the best way. You see, because that water now, as I mentioned, you don't know where your hands have been during your sleep. You see. And most times that water is going to be still water. As for running water, then there's no problem in putting your hands in, because the water is going to flow. Tajdeed al-ma. New water will come. And also, if you think about it, if a person was to make ghusl from janaba, from marital relations and the likes, in water still, and someone's going to come use that water after, that's going to be nasty as well. So Islam preserves all of these manners, you see. So again, it's not permitted to urinate or make ghusl from janaba in still water. So it also shows there's rulings regarding water when it runs and water when it's still, it doesn't run, stagnant water. There's rulings for each situation. We're not going to continue because the next hadith, there's a more of a lengthy discussion regarding using the remaining of someone else's water and the likes, that we'll discuss next lesson, inshallah ta'ala. And just a reminder, on the 18th and the following week, there will be no class. On the 18th of October, and the week after that, there's no class, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, I'm traveling.
Alhamdulillah.
I want to tell you I'm out for 1 month, inshallah, from next week.
Inshallah.
So I will miss 2. Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah. But yes, so there will be no class then, inshallah. The 18th of October and the following Wednesday.
And the 25th.
Yeah.
Tuesday still be on.
The Tuesday will be on, but not the following Tuesday. So the 24th won't be on. I'll be away from the 18th to the 28th. نعم بإذن الله تعالى. فنكتفي بهذا القدر. اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.